I should have screamed. I should have slapped her in front of the coffin. But grief has a way of freezing your spine and fogging your throat. I walked past mourners like a ghost, silent, brittle, barely tethered to my body. Their eyes slid over me with practiced pity, but no one saw what just happened. No one heard her whisper. Not even God, I thought. Or maybe he did and chose silence. At the car, my hands shook so hard I couldn't get the key in the door. I just stared at the reflection of my own face in the driver's side window. My lipstick was smudged. I looked old, older than I remembered. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. "We've decided to keep the reception family only. It's better this way." Family only. I had just buried my husband of 42 years. I wasn't family anymore. I don't remember the drive home. Just the dull ache behind my eyes and the terrible, echoing silence of the passenger seat. He wasn't there. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The funeral program slid from my purse onto the counter. His name in gold lettering. A photo of us smiling on the front from a time before cancer, before bitterness, before betrayal disguised as care. Then I saw the envelope. It hadn't been there when I left. I was sure of it. Cream-colored, wax-sealed in red. No postage, just my name on the front, his handwriting. I stared at it for an hour. Was it a goodbye, a confession, a warning? I made tea. I didn't drink it. I sat in his chair. I stared at the envelope. But I didn't open it. Instead, I picked up the remote and turned on the old answering machine, just to hear his voice again. Just to pretend, for a moment, he'd call me from the other room. Message 1. "Hi Mom, it's Lisa, just checking in. Let me know if Dad been confused again. I'll handle the bills this week." Message 2. "Hey, it's Dr. Redmond's office. We've updated your husband's medication. Please confirm dosage increase." Message 3. "Mom, don't argue with the funeral director. I've already paid for everything. Please don't embarrass me." My breath caught. Embarrass her. I had stayed quiet for months, let her take over his care, trusted that she knew what she was doing, that her intentions were pure, that my silence was love. Now all I could hear was her voice, and all I could feel was shame. I gripped the armrest to keep from crying. My fingers brushed something hard wedged between the cushions. A copy of our will, at least what I thought was our will. I opened it slowly. The name on the front had been crossed out, my name. Instead, the primary beneficiary was Lisa. Everything. The house, the savings, the pension, the insurance. I couldn't breathe. He had trusted her to handle things. I had too. And now I was alone in a house that might not even be mine anymore. I looked again at the envelope, his final words, the only thing left unopened between us. "If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did." I waited too long to speak, and now silence is all I have. I sat on the edge of our bed like it might break beneath me. His side still smelled faintly of aftershave and old leather. I stared at his slippers by the dresser, neatly aligned like he might slip them on any moment, and shuffled down the hall, grumbling about how weak the coffee was. But there was no shuffle, no cough, just me, just silence. The house felt too big for my breath. I called Lisa again, just to hear her voicemail, just to pretend. It rang, then stopped. No callback, no message, no warmth. I clutched the phone and let it press against my cheek. The last voicemail from her still echoed in my head, that sharp little line she left before the funeral. "Mom, don't speak out at the funeral, just sit quietly. It's not about you." I remember standing in the kitchen when she said it, tea in my hand, shaking, thinking it was stress, thinking maybe she was just overwhelmed, but now I know better. It wasn't stress. It was dismissal. A quiet rewriting of who I was allowed to be. The signs were there before he died. She insist on managing the bank accounts, said she was digitizing everything. He let her. I didn't argue. Then it was the mail, then the passwords, Then the medication schedule. "You're tired, Mom," she'd say. "Let me help, it's too much for you." She said it like love, but it felt like erasure. Even the doctor appointments, she attended them without me, said it was more efficient. And I let her, because I thought I was being wise, gracious, trusting. Because I believed that if I stayed quiet and composed, I'd be seen as dignified. But now I see it for what it was. She made me invisible, and I smiled through it. I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. I paused outside the office door. The mail slot was still stuffed: bills, flyers, white envelopes with government seals. I never touched them. Lisa always said she'd take care of it. I opened one. Inside, a notification from the county: property tax statement, past due. Another letter: final notice, health insurance adjustments, new account owner Lisa R. Hayden. My hand trembled. She hadn't just managed things. She had taken things. And I let her. I stared at the red envelope on the hallway table. The wax seal glistened like blood in the fading afternoon light. Why hadn't I opened it? Because part of me was afraid. Afraid it would confirm what I already suspected. That even in his last breath, I had been bypassed. Or worse, that he'd known and hadn't stopped her. My fingers hovered over the seal, just inches away. But I pulled back. Not yet. Not until I could stomach the truth. Because once I opened that letter, I wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. His handwriting still looked like him. Clean, careful, slightly slanted to the right, like he was always leaning forward to listen. The envelope had a weight I didn't expect, not from paper but from fear, from guilt, from everything I hadn't wanted to believe until now. I unfolded the letter on the kitchen table, the same place we used to sit and split toast, read the Sunday paper, argue gently about politics. That letter turned the air cold. If Lisa has changed the trust as I suspect, contact Helen. I'm sorry I didn't do more. Forgive me. My eyes stopped at the name, Helen. I said it out loud, like saying it would make the memory clearer. Helen Carter, our attorney for over a decade. She drew up the joint will when we first retired. I remember her voice, low, steady, the kind that made you feel safe even when talking about death. I hadn't heard her name since the day Lisa called a family meeting and insisted we redo all the documents online. "It's faster, cheaper," she'd said. "Helen's retired. I can do it all securely now. We just need some digital signatures." I had hesitated, I remember that. "I don't know," I said. "I think we should still have someone look at it." Lisa had smiled, that practiced, patronizing smile that said she knew better. "Mom, it's not 1995. This is how it works now, trust me." And I did. I trusted her because she was my daughter. I trusted her because he did too, though he grew quieter after that, more confused, sometimes angry, then ashamed of being angry. Now I wonder how many of his silences were resignation. That night I opened the filing cabinet in the back room. Our old records were still there: birth certificates, tax returns, military discharge papers. I flipped through every folder, every manila tab. No joint will, no trust papers from Helen, nothing older than 2 years. Just a clean black binder labeled Estate Plan 2023. I sat on the floor and opened it. Cover page: prepared for Lisa R. Hayden, successor trustee. Successor trustee. The second page listed assets: the house, his retirement fund, our joint savings, all restructured into a living trust with her name as both administrator and beneficiary. My name appeared just once in a line at the bottom: surviving spouse, optional provision for housing, to be determined by trustee. Optional. That word hit harder than any insult. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was waking up. I pressed my palm against the floor to steady myself. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on my chest. I didn't cry, not this time. I just whispered, "You knew." He'd known something was wrong. And even as he died, he tried to reach back through the silence, through the mess Lisa had made, to leave me a single name. Helen. That's where I'd begin. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into Helen's long, winding driveway. Her cottage sat tucked between two hills, wrapped in fog and ivy. It had been years, but nothing about it looked different except maybe me. She opened the door with surprise that quickly melted into concern. "I was wondering when I'd see you," she said softly. "Come in, you look frozen." Inside smelled like lemon soap and old books. She handed me a mug of tea and we sat at her kitchen table, the kind that looked like it had held 1,000 secrets. I unfolded my husband's letter and passed it to her. Her hands trembled slightly as she read. "I told him," she murmured. "I told him not to trust the draft Lisa sent. He said it was just a formality." She looked up at me. Her eyes weren't pitying, they were sharp, focused. "I should have pushed harder." I shook my head. He didn't want to fight her. He thought it would make things worse. Helen set the letter down gently, then disappeared into the back room. I sipped my tea with shaking hands. When she returned, she held a thick folder, worn at the edges and held together by a rubber band. "Here, the original will," she said. "Signed 5 years ago, both your names, you're the primary beneficiary. Lisa gets a share, but it's structured, conditions, safeguards." I nodded, already feeling the weight shift in my chest. Then she pulled out another document. "This," she said, "is the draft Lisa emailed your husband, the one he signed apparently. No legal review, no witnesses outside her notary, just her name, sole trustee, sole executor, sole authority." She snapped it shut. "In my opinion," she said, "this wasn't just manipulation, it's fraud. And if your husband was medicated or mentally impaired when he signed it," she trailed off. I swallowed hard. He was on heavy morphine. She managed the meds. I didn't even know what doses he was on. Helen leaned back and exhaled slowly. "Then we might have a case." It was the first time in weeks that I felt not powerless, not invisible. "I'm tired of being quiet," I whispered. Helen gave a small nod. "Then we'll speak through the law, and we'll speak loudly." We spent the rest of the afternoon at her table, piecing together the timeline. She took notes, made copies, outlined steps. Her precision was comforting, like an anchor in a sea of chaos. Before I left, she gripped my hand. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're not weak, you're waking up." The sun was low when I stepped outside. Cold wind pressed against my coat, but I didn't flinch. My hands were full, legal copies, handwritten notes, truth finally taking shape. Lisa thought she had buried more than just a body. But she forgot I'm still breathing, and I remember everything. There's a certain stillness that comes after grief, a numb kind of quiet. But as I stood in line at the pharmacy, clutching the old power of attorney document Helen helped me draft, I didn't feel quiet. I felt cold, controlled, focused. "Can I help you?" the technician asked. I slid the paper across the counter. "I need the full medication log for my husband, especially the final 30 days. She glanced at the document, frowned, then typed something into her screen. "Do you have a medical release form from the physician?" "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But I'm still legally listed as his healthcare proxy. It's in the system." She hesitated, looked again at the paper. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard like she was waiting for a reason to say no. But then she sighed, walked into the back, and returned 5 minutes later with a stapled packet. "Be careful with that," she said. "It's a full export." I nodded. "I intend to be." I drove to the small library 2 blocks away, found a quiet corner, spread the pages out on the table, my hands trembling just enough to smudge the ink. Morphine, hydromorphone, lorazepam. Dates, doses, refills. And then I saw it. The prescription changed drastically 9 days before his death. Morphine went from 10 mg to 30, then to 60. I flipped to the page Helen marked in the will's timeline. That was the same week he signed the new trust. I closed my eyes. I remembered him staring blankly at the TV, not even reacting to the noise. I remembered Lisa saying, "He's just tired, Mom. He's lucid when it counts." Lucid. I checked the next page. The competency certificate Lisa had attached to the digital will. Signed by Dr. Andrew Case. The name meant nothing at first, but then I remembered the graduation photo in Lisa's office, her med school friends, their arms around each other, caps off, laughing. One of them was Andrew. I pulled up his profile online. There he was, smiling, young, full of charm, practicing geriatrics in the same city. Of course. I called Helen. Her voice was sharp as ever. "Did you get the logs?" "Yes," I said. "It's worse than we thought." I told her about the morphine, the date jumps, the name of the doctor. She was silent for a long time. "Then we have her. She dosed him beyond capacity, had a personal contact falsify competency, and pushed him to sign under sedation." I could barely speak. My voice cracked around the edges. Why would she do that, her father? "She didn't see a father," Helen said quietly. "She saw a vault." I photocopied everything, bound it, labeled each page, proof of something bigger than just negligence. This wasn't grief. This wasn't bad judgment. This was orchestrated. Lisa thought no one would look closely. But the pharmacist made a mistake, gave me everything. And now I held the map to her entire crime. Grief is a thief that steals quietly, a name here, a scent there, a voice fatting in the hallway. But memory fights back. I hadn't planned to search the bedroom again. I thought I had already gone through everything worth keeping or mourning. But something gnawed at me. A restlessness. A feeling, sharp as a pin in the back of my neck, that he'd left more than a letter. I opened his nightstand. Receipts, cough drops, old sermon notes he never threw out. I almost missed it, a folder labeled church tax receipts, stuffed with yellowing papers. But beneath that, tucked in the crease, was something small and black. An SD card. I stood there frozen, the plastic burning cold in my palm. I carried it to the computer in the study, the one Lisa said was too slow to bother keeping. I booted it up. The fan wheezed to life. I slid the card in and waited. 6 files. Untitled. Just numbers and dates. I clicked the first. "Hi, sweetheart, I don't know if you'll ever hear this. Maybe I'm just rambling, but I'm scared. Lisa told me not to bother you, said I'd just confuse things. I didn't want to be a burden." His voice was weaker than I remembered, softer, slurred around the edges, but it was him. The second message was shorter. "She brought papers today, said they were just updates. I didn't want to ask too many questions. I was tired. She said it'd help you if anything happened to me. I signed them." The third broke something inside me. God, I hope I didn't make a mistake. I covered my mouth. My whole body locked still. That sound, his breath hitching, the scrape of fabric as he leaned to stop the recording, it was more intimate than any photo, more damning than any document. He knew. Not the details, but the betrayal. The fourth message was full of silence, just the soft sound of wind, maybe a car passing outside. At the end, barely a whisper. "I'm sorry." I listened to all 6, twice, then 3 more times. Each time I heard more. Fatigue, doubt, manipulation. But also love. He left them for me, not to beg forgiveness, but to leave a breadcrumb trail in case I ever woke up. And now I was awake. I copied the files, backups on flash drives, cloud, even emailed them to Helen. I labeled them clearly, voice memos, William Hayden. Lisa had taken everything, The accounts, the title, the house deed. But she hadn't silenced him. His voice was still here. Broken, tired, but real. I stood by the window and watched the sun fall behind the trees. I imagined him sitting right where I was now, pressing record with shaking fingers, trying to leave behind what he couldn't say out loud. She thought she'd buried his voice with his body. But I was about to make sure the world heard it. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. Suspicion eats at your stomach. Proof burns in your hands. Helen called me first thing that morning. The judge approved the subpoena, she said. We'll get the notary logs by noon. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My hands were already shaking. By 1 o'clock, we had the documents. Lisa had hired a mobile notary, one not affiliated with any bank or hospital. No witnesses, just a signature. And it wasn't some random notary either. It was Stacy R. I recognized the name immediately. Stacy was Lisa's college roommate. They once got matching tattoos. Same day the morphine dosage peaked. Helen's voice sharpened. She made sure no one official would be there. No medical oversight, no bank notary, no questions. I opened the cabinet by the stairs and pulled out the old external hard drive, the one that auto-backed up our home security feed. Lisa never knew it existed. It took 2 hours to locate the files. The date, 2 days before he died. In the grainy footage, Lisa enters through the side door, guiding Stacy by the elbow. My husband is visible in the living room, slumped in his wheelchair, head tilted, chin to chest. He wasn't even looking at them. Lisa puts a pen in his hand. I paused the frame. His mouth was open, slack. He was drooling. Lisa placed the paper under his hand and pressed it down. I zoomed in. His fingers were limp. Not a signature. A forgery in motion. I stared at that image for a long time. Then I took a screenshot, printed it, saved a backup, labeled it to living room signature frame. I sent it to Helen. When she called back, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This isn't just betrayal, she said. This is textbook elder abuse. My breath came slow, controlled. We have everything now, don't we? She exhaled. We do. Medical evidence, audio confessions, surveillance footage, and a compromised notary. I stared at the paper in my hand. My husband's vacant face frozen in time. My daughter guiding his hand like a puppet. How do we move forward? I asked. Quietly, Helen replied. No drama, no threats, just truth. Let her walk into court thinking she's untouchable. Then we pull the rug out. A silence settled between us. Then I said it, not loud, not proud, just steady. I want her to answer to the law, not just to me. Helen's voice softened. She will. You're not the only one she underestimated. I hung up and sat there in the dark for a while. No music, no television, just the sound of the clock ticking and the faint hum of something shifting inside me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about showing the world who she really was, with her own paper trail. The moment the court accepted the emergency petition, something in my chest cracked open, not relief exactly, but clarity. Helen handed me the stamped notice across her desk, her voice even. They'll freeze all financial activity on the estate until trial. All of it, the accounts, the trust, the deed transfer, everything Lisa thought she owned. She'll be notified within 48 hours, Helen added. Lisa didn't wait that long. She called me the next evening, breathless and hissing like a cornered animal. You had me served at Lily's recital, she spat, in front of the whole auditorium. I could hear the chatter behind her, music, footsteps, gasps. You're destroying your own family. I sat on the edge of the couch, his couch, the one she'd tried to claim in the new will. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. You did, I just lit a lamp. Oh, don't give me that sanctimonious crap. She was unraveling. Do you have any idea what you've started? I let her go on. The yelling, the guilt games, the twisting of truth. Then I said as calmly as I could, "You whispered I wasn't invited. Now I'm inviting the court." Click. I put the phone down and stared at the silence it left behind. For a second my hand trembled, old instinct, fear of confrontation. But then I remembered the footage, the pharmacy logs, his voice. She'd taken everything, but he had left me his story. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling. The old water stain above the fan, the ghost of a memory that used to be ours. At 2 a.m. I got up, walked barefoot to the office, and played the first voice memo again. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm sorry if this ends up being a mess. I never meant for you to carry this." I closed my eyes, let his voice wrap around me like an old coat. Each time I listened, I felt steadier, straighter. 2 days later, I stood at the courthouse steps in a gray coat he used to tease me for, said I looked like a detective in an old movie. Helen stood beside me, briefcase in hand. She didn't need to say anything. Across the lot, Lisa stepped out of her car, designer sunglasses, high heels, no eye contact. She looked through me the way she had at the funeral, like I was the afterthought, the inconvenience. But today I wasn't shrinking, I wasn't folding. I was the petition, the voice, the mother who remembered everything. I turned away from her, walked through those courthouse doors. And for the first time since the funeral, I wasn't mourning. I was moving forward. Her face in the courtroom. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and tension. Every seat was filled, lawyers, clerks, a few reporters, even faces from our church I hadn't seen since the funeral. Lisa entered in heels too high for a hearing like this, her chin lifted like she was walking into a fundraiser. Her lawyer, some young man in a navy suit who probably thought wills were boring until today, carried her briefcase. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. She thought this was just a formality. The judge entered, gavel swearing in, papers shuffled like restless birds. Then Helen stood, calm, composed. She clicked the remote. The first slide appeared on the courtroom monitor, a screenshot from our living room camera. Lisa leaning over her father, his hands slack, his mouth open. The notary, Stacy, standing off to the side looking down. Gasps rippled through the room. Lisa's lawyer jumped up. "Objection." "Overruled," the judge said without lifting his head. Then came the audio. His voice cracked, small, human. "Lisa said I'd confuse the finances. She said to let her handle it. I hope I didn't make a mistake." The room fell silent. I didn't look at Lisa. I didn't have to. I could feel her unraveling. Slide 2, the pharmacy record, dates, dosages, morphine escalation. Slide 3, the signature log, witnessed only by Stacy. Helen's voice never cracked. She administered increased narcotics in the days prior to his signing. She arranged for her personal associate, not a neutral notary, to witness a legal document. She removed her mother from the will. This wasn't a clerical update. This was calculated disenfranchisement. Lisa finally spoke. "He was fine," she snapped. "He said he didn't want to burden Mom." The judge raised a hand. "Ms. Hayden, you will remain silent unless called upon." Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She yanked her arm away. Helen continued. "We submit that the decedent was not of sound mind at the time of signing. We present video, voice, and prescription evidence. Furthermore, we submit that the will submitted by Lisa R. Hayden is invalid due to undue influence, mental incompetency, and conflict of interest." The judge turned toward Lisa. His voice was firm, final. "You manipulated a dying man for personal gain. The court finds this will invalid." I closed my eyes, not in relief, in stillness. Lisa sat frozen. Then her jaw clenched, her hands balled into fists. She stared at the floor like she could bore a hole through it. I looked at her just once. Not with pity, not with anger, just finality. This woman was not my daughter. Not anymore. I stood, turned toward the door, my back straight, my breath steady. And as I walked out, I left her there, in the wreckage she built with her own hands. The final clause. Some justice doesn't bang a gavel. It whispers from ink left on paper by a man who knew his daughter better than she thought. Helen placed the original will on the judge's desk like a final move in a quiet war. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Please refer to page 12, paragraph 5. The judge adjusted his glasses. The gallery leaned forward. Lisa fidgeted in her seat. He read aloud. If my wife is ever disrespected publicly by a named beneficiary, said beneficiary forfeits all rights to the estate and assets therein. It landed like a thunderclap. Helen smiled, not smug but knowing. The funeral was public. The statement was whispered but witnessed by surveillance and corroborated by the plaintiff's testimony. The clause stands. Lisa's mouth parted. Her lawyer reached for her arm. She whispered, "She's lying." I didn't move, I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The court clerk retrieved the transcript, the security footage. The voicemail. Lisa left me days before the funeral, cold, controlling. The judge looked at her like she was a child caught with scissors in her hand and a shredded curtain at her feet. In addition to prior findings, the court rules in favor of the petitioner. The estate shall revert to the original structure. Ms. Lisa R. Hayden is disqualified under Clause 12. Lisa didn't cry. She just stopped blinking. Her mouth clenched into that same flat line she wore the day of the funeral. Except this time, no one was fooled. The gallery buzzed. People who'd once called her graceful now whispered another word: manipulative. By the time we exited the courtroom, the whispers had turned into ripples. That weekend, I heard she lost 2 clients from her real estate firm. By the following week, her church group had suspended her role. I didn't call her, didn't send a message. There was nothing left to say. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate. I simply reclaimed what was mine. The house, the pension, the peace. Back home, I unpacked the final court documents and placed them in the fireproof box beneath the stairs. Then I picked up the photo of my husband, the one of us from our 30th anniversary, him in that hideous blue tie I hated, smiling like a boy. I wiped the frame clean, set it back on the mantel, and lit a candle. Not for grief, not anymore. For peace. For legacy. For silence. Then I whispered to the photo. You left me the tools, I built the wall.